Today, I would like to talk a bit about Theravada Buddhism, the general principles in Theravada Buddhism, and maybe compare it a little bit to Mahayana, and also about the difference between Samatha Bhavana or tranquility meditation and VIPASSANA Bhavana or insight meditation. First of all, Theravada means the way of the elders. And as Theravada Buddhism is considered to be the oldest form of Buddhism, at least in Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia, this is believed to be the case, and goes back to the original teachings of the Buddha in the Pali language or Magadha language. The principles are based on the Four Noble Truths, the truth of dukkha, the word dukkha, ku in Chinese, I suppose. Ku, 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 ku. I don't know which sound it makes, but it means a kind of suffering, or rather unsatisfactoriness. Now, the Four Noble Truths go like this. Birth is suffering, growing old is suffering, sickness is suffering, old age is suffering, death is suffering. Not to get what you want is suffering, and to get what you don't want is suffering. To be confronted with the unpleasant people and situations is suffering. And to be divorced from, or to be separated from, pleasant and very good relations with people and circumstances, environment, as a form of suffering. Now, the word suffering, unfortunately, was chosen by the translators in the Pali Text Society around 1890 in London to be the translation of dukkha. So the Buddha says actually, birth is dukkha, growing up is dukkha, growing old is dukkha, to die is dukkha, to be confronted with the unpleasant is dukkha, to be separated from the pleasant is dukkha. To get what you don't want is dukkha, and not to get what you want is dukkha. However, the word dukkha turned out to be translated to suffering, and therefore people are getting the impression that the Buddha was some kind of a pessimist. But I ask, if he were a pessimist, then what is the smile doing on the Buddha's face? There's a peaceful smile on the Buddha statues, and we cannot see that he is a real pessimist. But the misunderstanding about Buddhism that came about through that imperfect translation has now been rectified by saying that dukkha means unsatisfactoriness. So basically, life is unsatisfactory from birth to death. And even beyond death, when one is reborn in the human realm, the animal realm, the realms of the happy gods, the realms of the unhappy spirits, the hungry ghosts, etc. So even though we may be having a very good life and very pleasant environment and very good circumstances, maybe due to our good karma, still it's not 100% satisfactory because we don't always get what we want. And we cannot keep this body exactly the way we want. And therefore, the feelings and the thoughts and all the circumstances that we go through, the ups and downs of life, the vicissitudes of life, like gain and loss, happiness and unhappiness, and fame and blame, etc. Those are the circumstances of human beings which are not 100% satisfactory. So in that sense, every life and all forms of existence are a form of dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. But in the second noble truth, the Buddha says, the experience of dukkha as suffering comes basically from two factors. One is the ignorance, that means not to be an ignoramus, not knowing anything and not having read anything, but rather not seeing the things as they really are. That is the word for moha in Pali and ignorance in Buddhist English. And also it comes from the craving and attachment. Because if there's craving and attachment, craving for more, what you don't have, and attachment to what you already have, then there is a conflict between what is and what you want, and therefore you create your own dukkha, or suffering, or unsatisfactoriness. So that is called the second noble truth. Now the third noble truth says that there is an end to this suffering possible, not after death or in the distant future, but in this very life, even any moment. And that comes if we give up this craving or attachment through understanding and the uprooting of greed, hatred, and especially delusion. Now, delusion, according to the Buddha's teachings, the moha, consists of three main roots or factors. Namely, that we tend to project some permanency onto impermanent things. Actually, all conditioned things are impermanent. Sabbe sankhara anicca in Pali language. And to see this with the eye of wisdom is the key to purification, thus the Buddha says. Now, if we project some kind of permanency onto impermanent things, then we are actually experience a form of unsatisfactoriness or suffering. We do not accept the changes of the body, of the mind, of the environment, etc. So there is a conflict between what is and what you want, what you think that the reality is. Now, just simply speaking, the five elements of our body, feelings, perceptions, our mind and our consciousness, the intentions that we may have, they're all changing all the time, but we don't always want to accept it. So we basically rationally also can realize easily that the body is changing from the time we were conceived, born, then we grow up 1, 2, 5, 10, 15, 20 years old. The body is changing all the time. So we cannot say that the body is permanent. And even when we die, we cannot take it with us into the grave, especially if we are being cremated, of course. But the body is not permanent, the feelings are not permanent, then the intentions are not permanent, the perceptions are not permanent, and even our consciousness is not permanent. Well, it is permanently changing, we could say. But there's no such thing as permanent, everlasting, unchanging consciousness. In some religions, of course, people try to project this permanency onto, for instance, the consciousness. We might say that the individual consciousness of our thoughts and feelings may be impermanent and changing, but then there may be the God consciousness, the pure consciousness, the cosmic consciousness that may be permanent, or the hope that after death we will be reborn in a permanent sort of situation, maybe a kind of heaven which lasts forever and ever. Amen. However, that is not the case. According to the Buddha, all forms of conditioned existence in the 6 worlds, or if you break them up, there's 31 levels of levels of existence, like the 6 type of heavens and so on, the 4 type of hells and impermanent hells, impermanent heavens, the going up and down in the scale of happiness and unhappiness and rebirth and reincarnation and so on, till one attains nirvana, or the end of dukkha. So the third noble truth in the Four Noble Truths says there is an end to suffering, and that is nibbana or nirvana. Nibbana being the Pali, nirvana being the Sanskrit form of the word. So that can be realized in oneself, not just after death, but even in this very lifetime. And therefore, that is the hopeful aspect of Buddha's teachings, in the sense that there is a possibility of realizing this nirvana within one's own lifetime. And if not, as soon as possible. According to Theravada Buddhism, the ideal is to realize this nirvana as a follower of the Buddha. That is why we are called Sravakas, or students of the Buddha, who listen to his teachings and try to practice it, and then come to the realization of nirvana in one's own lifetime. Well, if not in this lifetime, as soon as possible. So then there are 4 stages of enlightenment, according to, even in the Diamond Cutter Sutta, you find this saying that the stream enterer is somebody who has entered the stream towards nirvana by realizing even a glimpse of that unconditioned thing which is there. The Buddha says there is something called the unconditioned, or the asankata dharma, which is actually nirvana. If that would not be there, there would be no escape from this rebirth in the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth in the ocean of existence, or samsara. But since there is the unconditioned, which is nirvana, therefore we are able to escape from this cycle of birth and death and rebirth. Now there, of course, in Mahayana Buddhism they say, well, even if we are able to escape from that circle of rebirth, if we have realized nirvana either as a stream enterer, or a once returner, or a non-returner, or an arahat, lohan, then still we may choose to be reborn out of compassion for the suffering of other beings, and that is called the Mahayana, the great vehicle, not just enlightenment for yourself, but the bodhisattva ideal of working on the full enlightenment in the distant future for oneself, while developing the paramitas, 6 paramitas according to Mahayana, 10 paramitas according to Theravada, but they sort of overlap each other very well. And then by practicing these paramitas and working on one's own salvation, as well as helping other people to diminish their suffering and to find the path towards liberation, well, all that is then the path of the bodhisattva. It may take a long, long, long time, having to be reborn again and again and again. Well, according to Theravada Buddhism, once you reach the stream enterer's stage, the first stage of enlightenment, then there is a maximum only of 7 more lifetimes before you reach that final goal of nibbana or nirvana. So then they say the cause for rebirth has been taken away, namely ignorance and craving. But according to Mahayana, the very compassion for others, the karuna, the great compassion for the suffering of others and to diminish their suffering, is a good enough cause for rebirth. Not because we like samsara that much, we know that it is not ideal, we know that it is a kind of form of conflict and suffering or unsatisfactoriness, but still, out of the compassion for other people's suffering, we choose to be reborn out of this compassion. That is a Mahayana ideal. It's not being shared very much by the Theravadins, although we say we have the possibility to choose between Arahat way, that is as a follower of the Buddha, and attain nirvana as soon as possible, if possible in this lifetime itself as an Arahat, or the Pacceka Buddha or Pratyeka Buddha or silent solitary Buddha ideal, which is to be born in a time when there's no Buddha's teachings around, but still to realize the Four Noble Truths for oneself and by oneself without having the teachings of the Buddha around, and then to attain nirvana for oneself, but not being able to share it and show the path to others. That is called the Pratyeka Buddha path. So there have been periods between the previous Buddhas. We see that this Buddha, the Gautama Siddhartha, has talked about his own previous meetings with 27 Buddhas, and he is number 28 in that particular period. And that in between these teachings of the Buddha and the existence of Buddhism on this earth, there are periods when there's no Buddhism, no teachings of any Buddha around, and then still there are people who attain that enlightenment on their own steam, so to speak, but they cannot share it with others. They are called solitary Buddhas, or silent Buddhas, or Pratyeka Buddhas in Sanskrit, Pacceka Buddhas in Pali. And then there is the path of the Bodhisattva. In Theravada we also have that possibility to choose to remain in samsara as long as it takes, and to become a fully fledged Sambuddha, or a fully enlightened one. And that in itself takes a long, long time, many, many rebirths, and it is only very few individuals who actually will attain that lofty goal of becoming a future Buddha. So that is the point, that it's a very difficult path. But in Mahayana Buddhism, the concept of bodhisattva seems to be more generally those who wish to practice the paramitas and to attain Buddhahood in a long, long distant future can choose to remain in samsara and practice these paramitas, such as the dana paramita, the quality of giving, generosity. Then the sila paramita, the good quality of ethics, ethical behavior. And then the prajna paramita, the quality of wisdom, and also that of patience, of truth, of loving kindness and compassion. So these paramitas, when they're being practiced over and over again, over many lifetimes in thought, word, and deed, then they come to full fruition, and one could be a future Buddha. So the path leading to this enlightenment is called the Eightfold Noble Path, the Noble Eightfold Path, Arya Tangika Magga, or Arya Ashtangika Marga, and that path leading to the wisdom and liberation from dukkha is called the Fourth Noble Truth. And it goes like Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi. And that way, the Eightfold Path actually consisting of three sort of sections. One is called Sila, ethics, Samadhi, mental development, and Prajna, wisdom. So the right view, the right thought, then the right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration all lead to the goal of liberation from the causes of rebirth and liberation from dukkha, suffering, and the realization of nirvana in this lifetime or in any future lifetime. So this is a summing up of the Four Noble Truths. Now, the difference between Samatha Bhavana and Vipassana Bhavana, or tranquility meditation, Samatha Bhavana, and insight meditation, or Vipassana Bhavana. In Samatha Bhavana, According to the Visuddhimagga, which is called the handbook of the 5th century by Buddhaghosa, an Indian scholar who came to Sri Lanka and wrote this very thick manual for meditation. Well, according to that, there are like 40 meditation objects or techniques which one could practice, and 39 of the 40 are actually samatha bhavana type of meditations or tranquility meditation. And they go like the recollection of the qualities of the Buddha, recollection of the qualities of the Dharma, recollection of the qualities of the Sangha, the enlightened man, his teachings and his followers. And also the meditation on loving kindness, metta bhavana, which we will practice in our guided meditation as well. And also the practice of mindfulness of breathing, anapanasati bhavana. Now, anapanasati means the mindfulness of breathing in and breathing out, to be aware of your breath. And in that way, there are different interpretations of that teaching. The Buddha says, well, find out a forest, then sit under the tree and put your body straight and fix your attention in front of you and feel the breath, becoming aware of the body, including the breath, and then focus on this breath as much as you can and try to exclude other objects and come back again and again till you get fixated or concentrated or absorbed in that object, namely the touch sensation of the breath inside the nostrils, basically, where you feel the air touching. And later on, in recent developments of the meditation schools, especially in Burma, Vientiane, or Myanmar, there one finds that, for instance, the school of Mahasi Sayadaw, the great teacher who became an arhat himself, who passed away in 1982 or 83, he taught that to be mindful of the rising and falling of your abdomen. When you breathe in, the abdomen comes forward and then it sinks and it rises and falls, rising and falling. That concentration of the mindfulness should be on the belly, so to speak, the feeling of the rising and falling of that breathing in and breathing out. And then to be mindful and maybe even to note or to, to put a label onto the experiences, such as, stretching your hand or drinking a cup of tea, or the sensations in the body, or the thoughts in your mind. Those are kind of objects that come and go, which can be labeled, which can be noted, which can be aware of. And that method is called the dry VIPASSANA meditation, or the meditation which leads to, to liberation, to arhathood, but not on the basis of jhana or chan or zen. It's not the deep concentration on one chosen object, but rather the dry mindfulness from moment to moment, to be aware from moment to moment, without getting into that lofty state of deep concentration with the concomitant psychic powers, such as clairvoyance, clairaudience, the reading of other people's minds, the recollection of previous lives, or the bilocation or multilocation, to be able to appear in different places at the same time. Those are the psychic powers which are results of samatha bhavana or tranquility meditation. If you get into the 4th jhana out of the 8 jhanas, there are 4 jhanas in the form and 4 jhanas in the formless realm, then you are able to get these psychic powers. But as the Buddha said, what are these psychic powers for? One man came to him and he said, now I can walk on the river Ganges, on the water. The Buddha says, well, I pay 5 cents to the boatman and I come from this side to the other, so why should I spend 12 years in the forest to develop these psychic powers on the basis of samatha bhavana or tranquility meditation? Although the Buddha himself had developed all those powers because of his teachers, which taught him the 8 steps, towards the deepest form of meditation, which is called the eighth jhana, and then the Ashtasamapati, to be able to stay in that for a week without moving, without the need for food and drink, etc. But beyond that, there is the Samatha Bhavana, or the tranquility meditation, or VIPASSANA meditation, insight meditation, which says that you can be aware of your breath, but you can also be aware of your mind, your feelings, the sounds, the sights, everything that is in this body and mind, and maybe concentrate or be aware more of the breath at the beginning, but then include all the other objects, such as the sensations and the thoughts, and maybe even the qualities of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. That means the being aware of the changing nature of everything within the body and mind, then the unsatisfactory nature of all that, and maybe also the non-self nature, anatta, that Buddha was called anattavadin, namely that he opposed the view of an eternal, everlasting, unchanging soul by saying there's nothing permanent in all this body and mind structure. Everything is impermanent, everything is changing, therefore it is not 100% satisfactory, and therefore we could say it also doesn't have a permanent, everlasting, unchanging core, self or soul. Therefore it is anatta. But on the other hand, what is called the asankata dharma, or the unconditioned, which we can realize for ourselves, not by going anywhere or by doing anything, but just by being and being aware, practicing awareness from moment to moment, maybe called choiceless awareness, a coined term by J. Krishnamurti, but similar to right mindfulness in Buddhism. Well, in the case of that kind of meditation, it is moment-to-moment awareness of what is actually happening, and then getting to see the things as they really are in their aspects of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Realizing that for oneself, one becomes liberated from the attachments and the aversions and the wrong identification as this is me, mine, and myself, and my own, and my soul, and therefore overcoming ignorance and gaining wisdom, insight into the nature of the reality, and therefore liberating oneself from the causes for rebirth. And then the question comes, well, if you have reached that stage for yourself, can you still choose to remain in this ocean of existence, not because you like it so much, but for the sake of the suffering beings around you, and to let it be and remain in that ocean of existence as long as it takes, until all beings are liberated, even until the last blade of grass gets eliminated. Well, according to Theravada Buddhists, that is an impracticable proposition. They say, just work on your own salvation and don't delay it. Appamadena sampadetabbang, the Buddha said at the end of his life in the Parinibbana Sutta, and saying that don't delay till tomorrow what you can do today. And then, of course, we have to see whether it is possible to find that final liberation of oneself as an arahat in this lifetime, or whether it takes another few lifetimes, but never mind, it doesn't matter. My short philosophy of the Nevermind school of Buddhism, as opposed to the Chittamatra school of Buddhism, is that mind is mind, matter is matter. Mind is not matter, and matter is not mind. Mind does not matter, and matter does not mind, so never mind, it doesn't matter. Tiruvan Saranai.